Back in the car shop the next day, we learn that business has been booming for Chuck since the big race. He gives Hank a big raise before telling him that the second judge from the race had called in offering him a job.
I told him no.
You did?
Why, I said you'd think about it. That way I could give you a raise, and then you could turn him down.
He gets another phone call, this time from Alex, who is inquiring about a date.
You know, I'm learning a very weird lesson here.
What's that?
Everybody loves a quitter.
Hank and Alex prepare to go on their big night, but we also learn that this is the opening for Roddy's art show. Roddy takes part in some sort of modern art shtick that involves making sculptures out of car parts. This is also the first scene where Roddy starts doing the whole crazy bit in front of Hank and Alex.
That's right, because he's alive and he's got, do you remember feelings?
Uh-huh. Well, if that's true, then I'm sure the car shares my feelings that you've gone a little psychotic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's right. You,
Oh,
yeah,
you,
the guy with the
no,
projector.
don't think, no.
Also a quick note that I have literally seen no other Herbie movie master the art of making Herbie's honks as emotive as possible, nearly as well as this one does.
He doesn't mean it, he'll come around. You know what? You come with me.
Alex and Hank stomp by Roddy's show only to see that he's placed Herbie in a room as an exhibit to project text onto.
But come on, man. Irony. It's the 90s, Hank boy.
Holy shit, this movie was ahead of its time.
It's what had to be said, Fred.
All I can say is, thank you.
It had to be said.
What had to be said? What? You actually believe them?
It says what it says.
It said what? I don't hear anything. Say what? What does it say?
Simon figures out that the car is at the show and breaks in to try and investigate the inside of it. He eventually gets in a fight with Hank.
Well, let's drive. I got 5 speeds for you, pal. Yeah, you think you can
Yeah,
handle
right. Oh, I am quaking in my boots.
He gets kicked out, of course, but not before he steals Herbie's key and sees a plate in his hood that identifies his creator. Simon gets his lackeys to hunt down the man who originally created Herbie, a German mechanic who had built him in an attempt to create a literal living car for the American army after the end of the war.
They wanted me to build them their own car.
We want you to build us our own car.
This is usually the part of the film that most people like to make fun of and pick apart. The main problem is, of course, the uncomfortable fact that if this guy was a mechanic on the original Volkswagen project, and he's also German, that makes him a Nazi! Two things here. For one, I refuse to accept that Nazis even exist in the Love Bug universe. For two, you want to know who else was a Nazi? The previous Pope, Fanta Soda, Volkswagens in general, and the NASA space program were all also created by Nazis. We're all fine with enjoying those things, sometimes all at the same time. Apparently this German scientist was brought to America by these military dudes who mistranslated the People's Car project as an attempt to create a living vehicle. Optimistic and young, he decided to undertake this project for real. One day, he accidentally let an image of his late love fall into the mix and found that the car had somehow become alive after this fact. I can see people saying that this is kinda silly, that the American government wouldn't do something this stupid, or that this backstory doesn't have any real bearing. Herbie fans are likely to get annoyed that the story was explained in such a way, and casual viewers will find this to be an odd explanation. Even I am a bit turned off by the direction of being this forward with the whole thing. But I can at least say that it's building up to something amazing. Hoping to create his own car as a Herbie replacement, Simon asks the man to try and duplicate the process to create some sort of Herbie Mark II. And after being given every stipulation he asks for, he eventually agrees that he can do it and sets off on the process. However, Simon secretly plans to sneak quite a few things into the mix. Hank gets visited by the person who wanted to offer him a job, but finds out that he's not interested in Hank as a racer, but instead wants some sort of clown car to entertain the sidelines. Hank grows angry that once again Herbie is outshining him and sends the man off before storming off himself. The German scientist calls Simon in after he has completed the project, saying that it has been a horrible failure and must be destroyed. And so we're introduced to Horace, the hate bug. You see, this film decides that rather than having some sort of evil NASCAR driver or an oil tycoon or something that wants to, I don't know, destroy the park, the most logical step to do in this Herbie sequel is instead to just make an evil Herbie. It's certainly a very corporate, strong-handed decision on the writer's part that doesn't represent the tone of the previous Herbie films very well. He has little point in existing outside of this film being convinced that this is the road that they should go in. Horace the Hay Bug is, without a doubt in my mind, one of the greatest movie cars of all time and easily the best thing to ever come out of the Love Bug franchise. I'm serious. God damn it, I love Horace. Horace is the Darth Vader of cars. He's amazing. His design is flawless. He nearly comes alive whenever he's on screen, arguably more than Herbie ever did. I'm actually fascinated so much by this little car. It's something that boils down not just to being a kid and wanting to pick your favorite superhero, but also by the interests in art as an adult. Consider this, for instance. The 3D effects that involve Horace are much more convincing than any that involve Herbie, because Horace is nearly specifically designed to fit within the two looks that 3D could pull off back then: rubber and glossy. On that note, as a literal car that I would actually need to drive, I think I might want to pass on Horace. I mean, look at him! He must be impossible to control. You see, the original Volkswagen Beetle holds a series of blind spots that cause trouble when driving the vehicle. But the people behind this movie looked at all that, studied it closely, and said, I can fix this. There. Now it's fixed. Hank comes home to the shop to find Herbie gone. He tries to get Roddy to admit where he took it, but Roddy insists that Herbie went out on his own.
Nobody would believe I made the car do what it did because he did it.
Herbie hunts for Hank and Hank hunts for Herbie. Now, in the original 60s film, this was a crushing scene, but at least it ended with our pals together. Not in this movie.
Sorry, little car. It's the end of the road.
Herbie!
Herbie? It'll be okay. We'll fix you up. Hang in there, Herb. Hang on, buddy.
So, Herbie straight up dies, and they hold a funeral in his honor. I mean, I knew this film was gonna go dark, but I didn't think it was gonna turn into a murder revenge flick halfway through.
I'm Jim Douglas. I was a friend of Herbie's. I think we need to talk.
This is Jim Douglas, a name you may recognize as being mentioned multiple times throughout the film as the original owner of Herbie. In other words, he was the main protagonist throughout most of the original Herbie films and the short-lived TV show. He's of course being played by the same actor. Douglas's role in this film is basically to bridge the gap between the original films and this half-reboot, half-sequel. He literally passes the keys to the franchise along, and it serves as a lovely moment to bring him in again. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that while Sony apparently still doesn't know how to make a reboot, Disney figured it out a very long time ago. Douglas says that it should be possible to rebuild Herbie and have him good as new. Some people might argue that this, as a possibility, removes all connection to Herbie as anything mortal or comparable to humans, but I would argue that Herbie is a car. That's an interesting idea, but consider this. In replacing most of the parts on the car, is it still the same car? Or is it just a new car that you're calling the same name? It's an interesting thing to consider.
Unless we make the new car entirely from the old, it won't be Herbie.
Oh, yeah. Any non-original parts will cause him to lose his vital essence.
Stop being good at everything, movie! As a kid, I would be quick to point out that this film's logic that the entire frame must be melted down in order for Herbie to still be Herbie contradicts scenes in other films where certain parts are entirely taken off and replaced. But in the film, it is also stated that just Herbie's key is enough to make Horace. So evidently, as long as some of the mold is still in there, it doesn't matter. Damn it, even the problems with this movie that I knew about when I was a kid don't hold water. They need to be able to remake these parts from scratch, so Hank goes up to the second judge, who of course has the capabilities to do this. To pay for this, he has to give up his racing money, and the work on the car can finally continue.
Hey, look, I'm sorry about your cars too. Maybe tomorrow. No charge. We're doing something important here. Or at least I think it's important.
I've been glossing over Chuck so far in this review, but I think it's notable to bring him up. Even when it's just a side character who dumps exposition, I feel like he's done amazingly well. Not only do you get a couple of moments like this where you feel like he actually kind of gives a shit, but he also gets some of the best lines in the movie.
Go, Herbie! Go! Go! They're all gonna die.
Fun fact, did you know that guy was in an episode of Twin Peaks around the same time? Hilarious, right?
It's showtime.
Why I said you fixed his judgment.
That call. He says he's job driving. Well, I think they called that spinning out.
Another side character, obviously, is the second judge, who is meant to be a threatening figure. And with his dated 80s jacket, miniature ponytail, and constantly unlit cigar, I keep feeling like this shouldn't be convincing and should in fact annoy me quite a bit, but I don't know, it kinda works for me. Maybe this is just definitive proof that my nostalgia is blocking my basic senses here, but I feel like this film just keeps doing things that shouldn't work, and yet the dedication of the actors to their parts make it all work out somehow in the end. Like, if this dude wasn't totally into this role, if he didn't have just the right amount of swagger in his walk, this would be so goddamn stupid. But what can I say? I'm convinced. And for our third and final side character that I'm going to discuss, I'm going to bring up the character of Rupert. Rupert is the assistant of the main villain, Simon Moy III. What I like about him is that he has this consistent look on his face, as if he's constantly considering how he ended up where he is. How did I end up here, man? Working for more evil Scrooge McDuck? Jim Douglas is absolutely spectacular in this film. Dean Jones has one of those voices that you just want to listen to for hours on end. I would listen to that man read the damn phone book. He was that amazing.
Oh, he was everything we'd like ourselves to be. Loyal, giving, pure.
Well, I wish I had that figured out before this happened.
He'd understand. That's probably what he's best at, understanding.
Interesting tidbit, the best I can figure, this film is a sequel to the original film from the 60s. I mean, obviously, right? But it also sort of ignores the canon of every other Herbie movie released up to that point. For instance, Herbie has that whole specific backstory that explains why he's alive, but in other films it's been suggested that all Volkswagens are alive, but Herbie's just the only one that's vocal about it. Also, Douglas references events of the first film as, quote,
That's how I met my wife.
Which is odd, as further films would go on to show Jim single, as if the marriage hadn't lasted, and in the spin-off series, he marries a different woman entirely. So after days and days of work, during which time Hank straight up doesn't sleep, Herbie is back together again. And so Herbie is resurrected. And if my 3.5-month course on film taught me anything, this means that Herbie is now a Christ figure. Alright, let's check this. Miracle birth, check. Performs miracles, 3 checks. Breaks rules, checks. Dies and is resurrected. Yeah, this is all looking good. Yeah, we can go ahead and give this one the roof of approval. Meanwhile, back at the lair of the villains, Simon decides he needs to take Horace out for a ride. While on the road, the two see that Herbie has been put back together. Wanting to settle the score once and for all, he challenges them to a final race to decide the fate of the 2 cars.
You make it sound like a duel.
And so we are quickly catapulted into the 3rd act of the film, as the 2 cars meet up for their final showdown. There's a long scene where the 2 main characters monologue to each other, discussing the complex backgrounds and intricacies of their relationships. It is done surprisingly straight, I might add. I mean, you'd think that a drag race between 2 cars not designed to go over 70 miles per hour would be a little bit silly. But no, this was taken absolutely, totally straight. As if this moment is the most important thing that humanity would ever set eyes on. I also note that Horace does the thing where his eyes and bumper bend like he's making a face, and it doesn't look like horse shit like it does in the next movie. And so they're off. And while the race initially looks as if it's going to be a simple game of back and forth, Herbie's ahead, Horace is ahead, etc., etc., Simon eventually apparently gets bored and decides to reveal that Horace is actually a James Bond car.
Hey, what is it, Roddy?
Hank!
What? Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Back off! Back off!
This is where we say ciao.
Hank briefly considers staying out of the race because he's worried about the Horace team trying to kill Herbie. We also get this brief line, which again is almost the most painful scene in the movie.
So this is where I give the big Susie cheerleader speech. Be the rah-rah adoring female, huh? Oh no, Hank, you have to go on. I believe in you, Hank. You can do it, Hank.
Yeah, sure, feminism, yeah, 90s. So they get the spare on and they decide to get Herbie back into the race. At this point, I'd like to appreciate the directing in not only this scene, but the entire film itself. Not only does the fluid editing and camera work help make for a more believable world environment, but of course, without good directing, the acting wouldn't be nearly as on par as it is to have the entire film. The director seems to do a few films every couple of years. Most recently, he directed the 2015 Marvel film Ant-Man, which I actually got to see in the theaters. Most people say that it was sort of lackluster, but I actually got a lot out of it. It was a fun, entertaining standalone film to me, and I appreciated how it did things that other films probably wouldn't. Like it or not, you have to admit that the direction and the choreography was amazing and very well done. So jumping back to 1997, the Horace team sees that Herbie has finally caught up to them. And Simon is all like, well, if I can't cheat to keep them out of the race, I might as well fucking kill them.
What the? Grenades!
It's such an odd tonal shift to have the main villain just openly trying to murder the main characters all of a sudden. But honestly, I think it kind of works if you're already this far into the film's take on the world. I mean, Simon is a very intelligent, self-aware, educated, crazy person. When he gets his demonically possessed Satan-mobile, of course he's gonna want to kill everyone. I know you all love a good nitpick though, so I'm just gonna leave the question in your minds of what the Horace engine might look like if there's just a hole in the middle of it where this grenade thing can pop out. The Herbie team obviously freaks out about all this, and Roddy comes out with the most articulate and brilliant speech ever spoken by man.
Of course! Don't you get it? He has to get rid of Herbie. This isn't just a road race to him, it's a duel between good and evil, love and hate. And as long as love is around, hate can never rule. But if hate were to win, we have to beat him, that's all!
What the fuck are you talking about? Man, I thought this was going to be one of those light can't exist without darkness speeches, but no, that went to some crazy fucking places. I wish I was in this guy's mind right now, because he looks like he knows what he's talking about. Like this is all forming some sort of amazing mental image of a dystopian future where evil has won because of this race, and there is no good. Like, what the hell happens if evil wins? Tell me, Roddy, please, I want to know! Herbie eventually manages to pull ahead, but at that moment Horace's final modification is revealed as a laser beam cuts the freaking car in half as Horace passes through. I really appreciate the practical effects in this scene. Sure, I knew how they did each and every single one of them, but it's still neat. Horace passes through Herbie, but Simon is distracted by Alex for a long enough period of time that the right side of Herbie can pass along ahead of him. And thus Herbie is able to come in first and third in this race. This is actually one of the only scenes in the movie that's literally pulled straight from the original. But honestly, I kind of feel like it's a lot more justified in this film. So of course the Herbie team wins, but Horace becomes enraged and steams off to attack Herbie again. Herbie's able to pull away first though, and Horace flies off the broken dam and into the dried up river.
And you could have it all. My empire of dirt. I will let you down. I will make you hurt.
But before Simon can mourn for a second longer, he's suddenly stopped by the local police who take him in for attempted murder. I'm joking, it's for a bunch of stupid minor shit.
Illegal detonation of explosives, driving an unregistered devil car, illegal dumping of said devil car.
Why does no one in movies or television ever get arrested for actual obvious crimes that they have committed? Why are they always taken away for minor technicalities? And why is calling the cops always an afterthought? You never see someone in a tricky situation just call the cops. Instead, they apparently have to win without the authorities first, and then they get to see justice. Complete insanity. The final scene starts off with what looks to be the wedding of the two main characters, but is actually just a photo op for Alex's magazine with two people who kinda look like them. I think this is supposed to be a subtle jab at the end of the original film, where the two get married for little justification other than movie romances ended this way. But the film still shows its respect to the original by ending on very similar shots. And so that was the 1997 Love Bug reboot. Ample talent was wasted on this movie. I mean, I love this film, but even as someone who grew up loving every single Herbie movie I ever came across, like they were my family, I know for a fact that it might not have deserved this much good stuff. I honestly did not expect for this to be as good as it was. I thought it would be something like watching Power Rangers, you know what I mean? Good for what it was, but at least a little hokey. But I love everything in this movie, I really do. I love the acting, I love the writing, I love the directing. There are a few lines that are funny bad, but nothing that's outright terrible and impossible to watch. It's a clever homage to the previous films, but it also exponentially increases on the value that it has to output. Most importantly, it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh a lot. It is a good movie, front to back, side to side. I have nothing else to say about this. I've already outstayed my welcome. But is all of that really true? Is my nostalgia blocking significant problems that are obvious to you but not obvious to me? Are you considering watching this movie after my review? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comment box below. Now if you'll excuse me, I think my ride is here. Bum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum bum ba-dum dum ba-da-dum bum ba-dum bum ba-da dum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-da-dum bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-da-dum ba-da-dum bum ba-dum bum ba-da